Number 1. Lex Luger. Built at 6 feet 6 and weighing in at 275 pounds and with a body that looked like it was chiseled out of granite, Lex was one of those guys that even when you were not watching back then, just by looking at his body alone, he looked like the guy who was going to be the next big thing. And WWE did try to push Lex Luger. After Hulk Hogan's departure from the company after the 1993 King of the Ring, it opened the door for a top new babyface, and Luger made an abrupt babyface turn as this All-American made in the USA, and was billed as the second coming of Hulk Hogan. He was put in feuds with the likes of Yokozuna and Bret Hart. However, reactions to Luger wasn't exactly groundbreaking, with The Undertaker and Bret Hart being even more over with the crowd. At one point, it seems that Vince even pulled the trigger, and Lex was taped walking out with the title belt on Raw a month before the pay-per-view. There were criticisms of his lack of mic skills and boring personality, and that he was just somebody with a very good body but nothing much else to write about. He didn't have the X-Factor chemistry that resonated with the crowd, and eventually Lex returned to WCW not for greener pastures and ended his career never having won the WWF title. And it's a shame really, because Lex Luger probably had one of the best main event looks compared even to what we see today. Number 2. Kerry Von Erich. At 6 feet 2 and 254 pounds, Kerry was another guy that you see his picture and you go, whoa, why wasn't this guy a top main event star? Now, the story of Kerry Von Erich will always be intertwined with the sad story of the entire Von Erich family. Kerry Von Erich and his brothers were red hot in the 80s in the wrestling hotbed of Texas in the top promotion, World Class Championship Wrestling. The top performer of all the Von Erich brothers was Kerry, and in 1984, in front of 45,000 fans in the sold-out Texas Stadium, he won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship from Ric Flair. However, when he jumped over to the WWF back then, Vince McMahon and the WWF changed his gimmick to the Texas Tornado and just chose to entirely ignore his accomplishments in WCCW, and Von Erich had to start all over again. Soon after, tragedy struck and Von Erich was involved in a serious motorcycle accident which resulted in his foot being amputated and his ankle fused in a locked position. Kerry also had a serious drug problem, including addiction to painkillers, and it was reported that he was often incoherent in the dressing room. By the turn of 1991, he was well and truly buried in the mid-card, and he left the WWE in 1992 after a succession of losses. Tragically, he committed suicide in February 1993, just before he was scheduled to stand trial on drug charges which would likely have resulted in prison. Number 3. Tom McGee. Built at 6 foot 4.5 inches and weighing in at 275 pounds, Tom McGee at one point was given the title of the strongest man in the world. Tom started out as a world champion bodybuilder and strongman competitor, but eventually translated into a professional wrestler from 1985 to 1990. Now, coming into the WWF with this kind of credentials, you could easily see why Vince McMahon was infatuated with the guy. This was also at a time where Vince McMahon was already looking for Hulk Hogan's potential successor in the years to come. Immediately upon his wrestling debut, McGee was pegged by many as the future star of the industry. Before Vince was willing to put a rocket ship on him though, he wanted someone capable to work with McGee to see if he really had it, and he chose Bret Hart, who was an excellent worker who could make McGee look his best. Now in the match, Bret made McGee look like $1 million even though McGee wasn't really all that great. And this is funny according to the Dynamite Kid, who said that McMahon practically wet his pants in awe and amazement of how great McGee looked in the ring. When Hart and McGee returned to the back, Vince apparently shouted, "This is my next champion," so it looks like he was going to be the second coming of Hulk Hogan. However, after pitting McGee against other wrestlers, McGee didn't turn out all that great, as his matches were more sloppy and his power moves looked feminine compared to what everyone saw against Bret Hart. According to Honky Tonk Man, McGee also lacked charisma and his promos were stale and boring. Aside from his looks, nothing really stood out about him as a top star. It didn't take Vince long to realize this, and soon his stock quickly plummeted, and that was really the end of McGee's push. Number 4. Mark Jindrak. Built at 6 feet 6 and weighing in at 265 pounds, Jindrak actually made his debut in WCW Saturday Night Taping in 1999, but soon after the then WWF purchased WCW in 2001, Jindrak came into the company as part of the Alliance angle. After stints in OVW and Sunday Night Heat, Mark was eventually called up by WWE, where he was originally planned to be in Evolution alongside Triple H, Ric Flair, and Randy Orton. It's not difficult to see why when you have a young upstart such as Mark Jindrak with the look, or as Triple H likes to say, he's the coal that Triple H will squeeze into the next diamond. Vignettes were even filmed that featured Jindrak with Evolution. We all know eventually he was replaced by Batista, so what went wrong? According to Bruce Pritchard, Mark didn't really want to be in the business. He landed in the business in the WCW power plant and never clicked and turned on in his brain to get to the next point in the business. He was eventually released in 2005, which is a waste because I felt that he really had that top main event look. But hey, at least we have Randy Orton. Number 5. Luther Reigns. Standing at 6 feet 5 and weighing at 285 pounds, this was another guy that trained in the WCW power plant alongside Mark Jindrak. However, he was more memorable than Jindrak, probably because he was stuck in significant feuds, especially when he became assistant to then SmackDown general manager Kurt Angle. So he was handed this relatively high profile role and even engaged in a lengthy feud with the Big Show. However, officials found his in-ring work nothing spectacular and he was struggling to get any kind of crowd reaction, so the company actually tried but failed to get over Reigns as a heel. I also believe his age and excessive steroids use came into play as to why the company weren't willing to support him even more. Luther Reigns eventually requested his release from the company and retired from wrestling altogether in 2006. Number 6. Mason Ryan. Now I'm sure we all know who Mason Ryan is. I mean, look at him, he's a beast. At 6 feet 5 and 297 pounds, Mason Ryan looks like some sort of superhero comic book character. The saddest thing though about Mason Ryan that he's most famous being Batista 2.0, given their similar looks, both jacked up muscle heads with the Mexican look. Now the difference was Mason Ryan was Welsh and he had that strong Welsh accent when he spoke, and that was probably one of the key reasons why he failed, because you know Vince, he's not gonna push those wrestlers that cannot speak proper American English. WWE did give him a chance though. He was this dominating powerhouse of Nexus, but we all know how the story went. If you're just a jacked up musclehead who can't talk and can't get over with the crowd, you're done. I guess this is just a matter of WWE not having enough patience to stick with Mason Ryan. He wasn't even put in a high-profile one-on-one feud other than being part of the Nexus angle. Eventually, Mason Ryan was put back to NXT for redevelopment and even began a singles winning streak, only to be released later by WWE just months after. What a waste. Number 7. Davey Boy Smith Jr. Standing at 6 feet 6 and weighing in at 265 pounds, Davey Boy Smith Jr. was the son of the late wrestler, the British Bulldog, also known as Davey Boy Smith, and Diana Hart. Davey Boy Smith Jr. was known in the WWE as David Hart Smith. Now, coming from a prominent wrestling family, Smith started wrestling at the age of 8 and was trained by his father Davey Boy Smith and his uncle Bret the Hitman Hart. He began his career in the independents and then in New Japan Pro Wrestling before being signed to a WWE developmental contract in 2006. He debuted in OVW in 2007 and eventually made his Raw TV debut months after. However, in November 2007, it was reported that Smith had been suspended for 30 days due to violations in WWE's wellness policy. After he came back, he would wrestle primarily on Heat. In 2009, Smith was finally featured in a prominent role by forming the new version of the Hart Foundation with Tyson Kidd and Natalya. While he was winning tag team championships with the Hart Dynasty, there was nothing much going on for him as a singles competitor. Smith was even quoted as saying when he was in the WWE he had lost passion, and when he left WWE he thought his career was over. This is so disappointing considering Davey Boy Smith Jr. had it all: the wrestling background, second generation wrestler from the Hart family, and the ideal look. And there wasn't any controversy or backstage dirt on him, so it's baffling why Vince and company didn't decide to give him at least a singles run. So there you go, that's my list for 7 superstars that had the main event look but failed to reach mega stardom. If you enjoyed my video, please give me a thumbs up and share this video with other wrestling fans. If you want more of this content, subscribe to my channel where I will be regularly posting more news, lists, and reactions on pro wrestling. I'll see you in the next video. Asian Pitbull signing out.